Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to my channel. I am beyond excited for today's tutorial and I hope you guys are as well. I wanted to do my own take on a classic look, which is a sugar skull, so I decided to make it a gold tarnished metallic sugar skull. And I also included a tutorial on how I did this DIY flower crown. So if you're interested and want to see how I got this look, keep on watching. The first thing you're going to want to do is outline the areas that are going to be black. I'm just going to be using a black eyeliner. This one is from Wet n Wild. Normally with a white skull you would use a nude eyeliner, but when I did that it was taking away from the black, so a black pencil works fine, plus the gold cleans it up really nicely afterwards. So I'm just going to go ahead and outline the eyes. I'm even going over my brows because I wanted the eyes to look sort of mean and angry. And then I'm going to outline the nose and the chin detail, any area that's going to require a lot of filling in. Once you're done outlining, it's time to fill it in with gold. So I'm going to be using a gold pigment and mixing medium from MEHRON. However, any loose gold pigment should work, and I know a variety of brands sell mixing mediums, specifically MAC Pro. If you have one in your area, definitely check them out because they should carry one. And so I combined the mixing medium and the pigment together to create this liquid gold formula. And I'm using a concealer brush to go around the areas that I outlined to really sharpen them up. And once I'm done with that, I'm just going to fill in the entire face with this gold pigment. When I was about done filling in my face, I started thinking of that scene from Game of Thrones. I hope there's some Game of Thrones fans out there with me, where Khal Drogo kills Viserys with a pot of melting gold. So I was like, you know what, let's go for that effect and take the gold all the way down the neck into the shoulders. So that's what I'm doing here, and then I just switched over to a larger brush to minimize the look of brushstrokes on the actual neck. And then from there, I'm grabbing a black face paint. I believe this one's from Kryolan, and I'm just filling in the eyes, nose, and chin. On the eyes though, I did leave a little space on the center of the lid and on the lower lash line because I wanted to add a shadow there for some dimension. The sugar skull photo I was using for a reference had a nice little point at the tip of the nose, so that's what I'm doing here. I'm just using a small eyeliner brush to add that little point to the tip of the nose, and I'm going back in with that gold pigment. You'll see me do this a lot throughout the video to clean up the edges because it gets sort of messy working with this liquid gold and the black. So you want to keep a really sharp edge on all the areas that are black. So just take that liquid gold, is what I'm going to keep referring to it as throughout the video, and a small brush to really define those sharp edges. Because this was my first time attempting this look, I did make a few mistakes along the way. The first one was that when creating this line, I started from the hairline going to the edge of the mouth, which doesn't ensure that you'll land at the edge of the mouth. So instead of doing that, start from the edge of the mouth and then create that line going back towards the hair. That way it ensures the line actually connects from the edge of the mouth to the hairline. From here, I'm just cleaning it up again with that liquid gold, and then I'm going to move on to creating the teeth/stitch marks. Again, I was referencing a sugar skull plus some other skull images when creating this look, but I really like the teeth of this one particular image. So I'm replicating that, and again, just cleaning up the teeth as I go because you just don't get a really defined look when adding the black over the gold pigment. You really need to go back in and clean it up. Now I'm just moving on to the chin detail. I was going to leave a blank space right in the middle, but decided to fill it in completely black because when I placed the metallic shadow over it, it added a really cool dimensional effect, which, speaking of dimension, adding dimension to a metallic skull proved to be a lot harder than it looks. So here I'm just adding the lines where I want that 3D effect. However, shading over a metallic base was really difficult. So I'll show you guys later on what I did to add that dimension over this metallic base, but for now I still drew these lines because it gives you a general idea of the areas that you do want to look 3D on your skull. And then I used these 3 specific shadows to do the shading and add the dimension. So a matte black, a matte brown, and a metallic bronze. So I started to shade in those areas, but when it wasn't working out, I decided to move on to the eyes real quick. So I'm just adding that metallic bronze to the center of the eyelid and also to the center of the lower lash line to give it that depth. And then I went back to try and highlight the areas that I wanted to pop and realized you can't really make something that's already metallic pop even more. So instead, we're going to be using the liquid gold as our highlight. So I'm going back in with the gold and enhancing those areas that I wanted to look lighter initially, and then shading around them to really make them pop. So I'm just going back in with that black, brown, and metallic eyeshadow and shading around the entire face, especially those areas that I want to look dimensional, like the brows, underneath the eyes, the chin, tip of the nose, around the face, and of course, the neck. Can you guys just see the dimension forming in the skull, especially on the brows? So when I went back to add a little bit of a highlight there, I further enhanced the arch to make the eyes look a little more angry. And of course, no skull is ever complete without that chiseled cheekbone contour. I'm pretty much done here, but I felt like the chin was missing a little something, so I'm going in with this metallic gold eyeliner from Urban Decay and adding some little dotting details on the chin. And now on to the DIY obnoxiously big flower crown tutorial. Here are the items you're going to need. A bunch of flowers, mainly roses, some floral wire, floral tape, a glue gun, which I didn't end up using, but you might need for details, and some scissors, which I ended up ditching in step 1. The first thing I'm doing here is cutting the floral arrangements into pieces. This is going to make it a lot easier to attach them and arrange them in however way you want onto the headband. And these flowers were made out of wires, so I definitely needed something a little more heavy duty versus the scissors that I originally thought I would be using. And I also went for more of a muted theme with the crown. I didn't want too much color because the sugar skull itself was bronzy and golden. There was no color added to it. In step 2, I'm taking 2 pieces of floral wire and twisting them together. This is going to make for a sturdier headband versus just using one. And then in step 3, I'm just taking some of that floral tape and winding it around that twist to connect them and secure them together. And keep in mind that once you add flowers to the headband, it's going to feel a lot smaller. So I didn't secure the ends just yet with that floral tape. I left them open so that way once I add flowers, I can readjust the size of the headband to fit my head. And now it's time to add the flowers, and there really is no purpose or direction to the placement of the flowers. Just add them to the headband wherever you'd like them to go and then hold them down with the floral tape. And that's another great thing about the floral tape versus the glue gun. You can always undo a flower later on if you don't like its placement, whereas a glue gun, it might be a little harder to get rid of. However, you can use the glue gun if you want to add things like rhinestones and little things like that to the flowers. But I'm just going through and adding all the flowers. I added a bunch to one side, and then once that got a little full, I switched over to the other. And then from there, all I'm doing is cutting off the excess stems so that the crown doesn't get too bulky. And to complete the crown, I'm taking one final long piece of floral tape and taping everything down, including the area that was open for adjustment. So I already adjusted the size of the crown before doing this. Make sure you check because you might be surprised as to how small the crown is after you've added the flowers. And then the final step, just admire your work and place on your head. Once I put the crown on, I decided to add some of that liquid gold to the roses for an added effect and also to match the makeup. I also did some paint splatters on the shoulders and chest. And to go all out, I also decided to paint my hands gold. And this stuff does completely dry down and it doesn't transfer. So if you want to paint your hands, go for it. And one last tip I want to give you guys, when placing the flower crown, I did do a half part in my hair and then placed the crown underneath the hair so that it held it down and did not move because this flower crown was huge. And with that done, that completes the look. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Give me a thumbs up if you did, and don't forget to subscribe so I see you in the next one. Bye guys.
Feels